Hey guys, this video is going to be a little different from a normal code-along tutorial. I'm actually going to build upon a tutorial I saw from Traversy Media in which we built this polling app right here. So this website basically lets us add questions, vote on them, and see results. And the original website comes with this functionality right here where we can vote and see the results, but what I just built in was this charting system. So we're able to actually graph out that data, and this chart will be dynamic to whatever poll we're viewing. So if I go to this best NFL's quarterback poll, you're going to see this chart adapt to it and actually bring out a bar chart. So it's better for data visualization, and it's going to enhance our app a little bit better. I'm going to start the tutorial by first building in this static chart, and then we'll build out a bare bones API endpoint so we can get the vote counts and add the charts so the page is more dynamic. If you're not familiar with JavaScript, JSON data, or Ajax, don't worry, I'll make the code simple enough so you can follow along and still get the end result that we're looking for. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave a comment and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. And also, don't forget to subscribe if you found this video helpful. I would love to make more videos like this, so getting your feedback on this really helps me. For anybody looking to follow along, I'm going to start this tutorial by downloading the original project files, and we'll get the website set up along with adding some items to the database, and from there we'll begin adding the charts and so on. So I need this file right here, so I'm just going to copy and paste this out to my desktop, and that's the main project file. So I can close all this out, and we have Polster there. So I'm just going to go ahead and from my command prompt launch the server and connect the database and so on. Okay, so now that we're in our project files, let's go ahead and just migrate the database. And we'll need to create a user here too. And now we can just start the server and make sure our app is set up here. Python run. Okay, perfect. So here we go. I'm going to go into the admin panel. We created our user, so I'll add some questions that we can vote on, and we'll go from there. So follow along with my questions or add in whatever you need here. So I'll just open up a second window and go in from there. And it looks like it already knows my password and username, and I'll just add some questions quickly. And instead of voting on those, I'll just go ahead and throw in some answers here really fast so we don't have to spend time doing that. Okay, perfect. So looks like our app's set up. We can vote on these questions and we can view the results. So we should be up to date here. And what we want to do is add a chart right underneath here, so it'll actually present a bar chart here to graph these out. So that'll be the next thing we'll handle. So I just opened up my project in my text editor, and we need to find the page in which we're going to add the charts to. So that's going to be results.html, and that's this page right here. So we're going to throw the charts underneath here. And for this, we're going to use Zinc Charts, and this is my favorite charting library or API. So Zinc Charts, to get started with it, we need to make sure we grab this link right here. This just basically lets our page know that we're able to use Zinc Charts commands and have the API installed. So we're just going to paste that in on top. And the next thing Zinc Charts wants us to do is add in an empty div with an ID so it knows where to put our charts once we start building that out. So I'm going to call that my chart here. And that's it. So we're going to get to our JavaScript now. And at this point, we're just going to add a static chart. So Zing charts basically requires one object of data and a function built in with Zing charts to render this. So let's just go ahead and start by doing this right here. So let's just give it a variable, and we'll call this chart data. And this will just be a nested object. And the first thing Zing charts needs us to do is specify the chart type. And this is all in the API if you want to go further. So the type is going to be bar. And at this point, I'm actually going to render the chart. We won't see anything until we add some data, but I'll just copy and paste some Zing chart code here. This method right here will actually render the chart. And what this does is because we have this in our page, it's going to render the chart inside the div that we give this ID name to. So we called it my chart. So it's going to say, okay, this chart data, render it inside of here. And what kind of chart, what information do we need? So what kind of styling and data do we have in it? We're going to provide all that in here and then throw that into this data attribute. So let's go ahead and add some static data. And I probably will copy and paste a little bit of this, but to start, I'll just type this in. So the X value, what do we want to have here? At this point, I'm just going to throw in some names and ages. So scale -X, and this is going to be an object. And the first attribute we're going to have is values. So what are we going to have as values in our X-axis? And this will just be an array. And I'm going to type in some names here. So Dennis, Eric, and Tim. And we'll actually see this start rendering out in our page. So let's go to our polling app and let's make sure we don't have any issues here. Okay, so I figured out what my issue was. I need to give this an ID, not class. And now I should be able to see the chart start being rendered out. Okay, so we have the space right here and we see the X-axis start being built. So this array right here is starting to output something onto our chart. So at this point, we just need to throw in some data now and we'll start seeing that graphed out. So we'll throw in another attribute here, and this one is going to be called series. So this is the actual data points. And this is just going to be an array. And inside of our array, we're going to throw in an object. So we can have multiple series values, and we won't go into that right now. So we'll add some values to our series now. And it's just like the X-axis where indenting's being funny here. We just need to give it the values attribute, and we'll give it an array. So whatever we put in the order that we put it in will line up with the names here. So for Dennis, we're going to set the age to 25. Tim is going to be, or Eric is going to be 23, and Tim is going to be 27. So the first index will line up with the first name and so on. And now we should actually see this start getting graphed out here. So there we go, perfect. We have Dennis at 25, Eric at 23, and Tim at 27. So that's a static chart right there, and we need to build upon this right here. So it's very easy to get that rendered out. And now what we need to do is we need to build out a very simple API endpoint. I'm going to walk you through this stuff. It's not even going to be the right method of doing this, but I just want to show you how to make an API call and actually get dynamic data to build this in. Our API endpoint will be a simple view that will grab some data and throw it into a Python array or a Python dictionary, and we'll just return it as a JSON response. So we need to go into polls for this, and in views, we're simply going to create a view called, let's just call it results data. And this is basically going to be this data will be the results to a single question at a time. So when we get to this page in the backend or in the template, we're going to make an API call to grab these results right here. So we're going to need to know which result or which question we're pulling results for. So at this point, it's going to take in originally the request and just a UID, or let's just say object ID. So let's just say OBJ for our object, and that's going to be the ID that we're going to pass in. And the first thing we need to do is grab the question. So it's a question model. And we need to grab it by the ID, and the ID is going to be that URL parameter that we're going to pass in. And now, actually, you know what? I want to go into, you should look at this anyways with your setup, but I just want to show you the models really quick. So we just have question and choices. So I want to show you that before we start calling those. And we now need our, and I'm going to call the choices votes. I like that as a better way of calling that. Because choice is a child of a question, we can actually grab all these questions choices by saying question dot choice underscore set dot all. So this will grab all of the choices here. So that's going to be Java, Python, and PHP. So it's going to grab all those objects, and it'll have all the data. And what we need to do now, and I'm going to create an empty array. Again, this is not the right way to build out a REST API or anything like that, but it's just going to make the point. This is a video for charts. This is going to be just an empty array, and what we want to do is we want to append a bunch of we want to append one object for every single choice that we have, or every vote. So for I in votes, let's get this array, and let's actually call this votes data, or vote data. And we just want to append to it, and we'll just throw in an object there, and we'll just say i.choice. So that's a i.choice text. So that's the answer. So that'd be Python, PHP, Java, or whatever our choice is. And we also want to, with that choice, we want to throw in the vote count, i.vote. Okay, so now we need to return this, and let's just let's import a JSON response here. So it's just like an HTTP response, but this is just for data. So from Django.http, and this just allows us to return a JSON, basically JSON data. So JSON response takes two parameters. We'll throw it this array of objects, or at this point, because it's Python, this list of objects, which will be turned into an array. And we want to specify this method, safe, and I won't go into this, but just make sure this is set to false. Okay, and let's just go ahead and print the vote so we can see what it looks like right now. And I just realized let's just do this. So let's create a URL path for this, and then I'll call it, and we'll actually be able to print that out. So now we can go into our URLs and throw in another path, and we'll just say results data, and we call that OBJ, so for the object ID. And let's just grab this this view right here, so results data. Okay, so let's test this out really fast. Let's see what we get back. And I'll just grab this URL parameter, and polls, and we need to do results data. And the result object, let's just grab the first one. Okay, so this is our top quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, and you see this list, and we have one object, 2 and 3, and then if we go to the second one, we'll get the favorite programming languages. Okay, so now we need to, we're going to use Ajax for this, so I'll just import that into the template really fast, and we'll actually make an Ajax call, and we'll get this in our template so we can actually start working within it. So I just quickly Googled up Ajax CDN, and we need to grab this so our template can use it. And let's just paste that into here right next to that Z chart CDN. And let's make our Ajax call really quick. So we'll start making our call above this chart right here. And I'm going to start just typing in Ajax, and I'll just try to explain along the way if you're not familiar with this method, at least, of doing things. So the first thing we need to tell Ajax is the method we're going to use, and that's going to be, we're going to use a GET request, so we can do GET or post data. We just want to retrieve some data, and the URL that we're going to call. So where do we want to retrieve that data from? And I'll just set a variable here and call it data URL. And I'm not going to use the Django way of doing things because I need to pass in a dynamic attribute here. So I'm going to start by using template literals. If you're not familiar with this, it's just like a JavaScript string, but it's these backticks. And it allows us to pass in a variable into a string here. So before I do that, in this original view where we call the results, we actually pass in the question into the template, right? So that means we can grab our object ID, and let's just use the Django way of grabbing that. We throw that into a string like that, and we can say, what do we call that here? A question. So we can say question.id. So we need this ID in order to throw it into the URL path. So let's just go ahead and grab this really fast. So we'll start at polls. And where we have 2 there, this is where template literals allow us to throw in a variable. So it's this $, curly braces, and we can now throw in that object ID. So we're making the API call to this URL. So we want to get back this data right here. So now that we have our URL set up, we can throw that in here, and let's just let's build a success response. And let's go ahead and make our call and console out the response. Okay, so when we load the page, we're going to grab our object ID, throw it into this URL path, and make that Ajax call. So let's open up this page now. And let's refresh. Console is not a function. Something's wrong here. Oh, console.log. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. We have our response, and we need to manipulate this data to fit our chart. So right now we have the choice and how many times it's been voted on. We just need to clean this up to match this method here where we throw in all the x-axis values. So we want this to say Python, PHP, Java, and then the vote count. So let's go ahead and manipulate the data first, and then we'll be able to return this the way we need it. So before we do that, let's go ahead and throw in this chart call, or the chart data. Let's throw that into a function. So it only gets built when a function is called. So let's just call it build chart. and all of this can be thrown inside. So we don't want to load this chart right away. We want to make our API call, get a response, clean up the data, and then build it. So let's make sure the indentation is right here. Okay, perfect. So our chart won't be built until that function is called. So let's clean up the data first. So let's grab this response. And what I want to do is create another object at the top of my page here. And we'll just call this our state. The state will just hold our choices and then their results. So we're going to throw that return value into an array. So let's just go ahead and call these items, and it'll be an empty array, and let's throw in the values here, and that'll also be an empty array. And as we load in that response, let's create a loop, and let's loop through our response and append them to this state right here so we can throw that into the chart. So I'll just create the loop really fast. So we're looping through this response right here, and we want to be able to grab all the keys and the values and throw them into an array. So the way to do that is we want to grab the values and append them to each to items and values. So let's go state.items dot push. So we're going to append to the array, but first actually let's just grab the key, and the key will be this built-in JavaScript method, object.keys, and we'll just grab the response. And when we say object.keys, it's going to give us it's going to put this into an array method. Even though it only returns one item, we still need to index it by 0, and we need to do the same with value, or with the key value pair. So we'll just call this value, and this right here will change to values. So it'll do the same thing as keys, only keys will grab this one right here, values will grab that. And now we can just append these to the array. So we'll do the same for the values now. So we're just appending to that, and we'll append each value, and I'll console out the new state. Looks like we have a small error. Okay, so I need to put the equal sign here so we can define our state, and now that should work. So it looks like we had a slight error, and this index value needs to be on the outside right there, and that should solve our current issue. And there we go, perfect. So our new state now has our array of choices and the values. So Java will align with 12, Python will align with 32, and PHP with 29. So all we have to do at this point is simply grab our state, and we can now call the build chart function. So first of all, let's throw that in here. And before we just start calling that, let's change our series values. So at this point with values, because our new data, or the data that we just cleaned up, is now an array, for the series data we can, or for the values, we can say state.values, and for the x-axis we can do state.items. And that should do it. This should give us our real data now. So let's see. Perfect, there we go. So we are now graphing out the results exactly how they're listed here. So Python, Java, PHP, and if we go back a question and we go to NFL quarterbacks, we view results, and now we are charting out Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. So that does it for this tutorial. Again, if this was helpful for you, please subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, give me feedbacks. I would love to know what to make in the future and how I can better adjust these. Thank you for watching.